So I didn't realize that my laptop was going to stop at 10 minutes of recording, but it did, and I kept going. I read number 4 and said my thoughts, and it didn't record. So I'm just going to finish my thoughts on number 3 and then move on to number 4 and try to recreate it as best I can. But I kind of finished with, not wanting to be the teacher assistant, but, reassuring that, or making sure that the instructor knows that I am the interpreter and not the teacher assistant, so it would be better if she were to walk over to the deaf student with me to make sure that she is understanding the concepts, because if they were both hearing, that's how it would work, and that's how the situation needs to be handled, because I am simply the interpreter, I'm not the teacher assistant. So I think that I would let the teacher know that she needs to come over there with me, and I can interpret for their conversation, but that's it. And plus, it would be a lot more helpful if the student actually had the teacher there to help, because I could literally only ask if she understood, because I know nothing about math. So, yeah, I would ask the instructor to walk over with me and ask the student if she's understanding the concepts, just as the teacher is doing with all the other hearing students. So, number 4. Segment number 4. During a break in the lounge, you and a colleague are discussing the student that you are working with. Okay, so we're working with the same student, maybe on a team, maybe not. The colleague has worked with her since she transferred to this high school. Okay, so she knows the student well, but I think we're not interpreting the same classes. She interprets a couple of classes with the student this year as well. You seek her advice about how to handle the interpretations in this class. So regarding this C sign policy versus the natural ASL. You are following the school policy of C interpretations, but the student does not seem to be following. So she's not understanding the C signs. She's not getting the correct education that she should. So the colleague responds, "Oh, I gave up on that policy a while ago. I just do what I know makes sense to her. I don't worry about the policy. The supervisor never comes in to check anyways. What are your thoughts? What would you do and why?" I would explain to my colleague how I feel about the situation, and I don't know if I really enforce this in my first segment, but I believe that, since I'm working for this school, I need to follow their policy, unless I went to talk to the supervisor and we either came up with a compromise or the policy got changed to ASL. But until the supervisor says it's okay, I would probably still follow their policy, just because that's the respectful thing to do. My voice is really... that's the respectful and ethical way to do things. I think that it would be important also to maybe even get the rest of the community's involvement in this. I don't know how big the deaf community is at this school, but in my school, my mainstream school, we had a huge deaf group of people that were getting their education there. So maybe there's other students that are also not understanding who needed to be switched to ASL. Maybe not, but getting the community involved I don't think would be a bad idea. Maybe taking a vote. And also explaining to the supervisor, our thoughts on these things. Maybe they're just not aware that ASL is the better language. You never know. So I think the important thing to do is to explain to my colleague that we need to go have a conversation with the supervisor about this before we go changing the policy, only because, the supervisor has it that way for a reason, and we can't be doing stuff behind their backs almost, is what that kind of is. My colleague may or may not respond with a good attitude, but if she doesn't want to come with me, my colleague doesn't want to come with me, that's okay. I would still go and talk to the supervisor and, let her know my thoughts on the situation, never attacking, just letting her know this is how I feel, this is what I'm noticing about the deaf student, and hopefully the supervisor is willing to talk and figure things out. If not, I don't know what I'd do. If the supervisor completely shut me down, I'd probably still stick to the policy because that is what I need to follow. But at the same time, I feel like I would not do a good job at signing exact English. I've never done it before, so I mean, I guess I don't have the background to base it off of. But I've been working there for a while, so I'm probably used to it. Maybe on my own time, I would talk to the parents because I know we set up an IEP with the student. So maybe discussing with the parents how they feel about it. But other than that, I think my first decision would be to talk to the supervisor and try to convince my colleague to come with me to discuss it as well. So we're not changing their policy behind their backs kind of thing. That's what I would do for number 4. Number 5. Segment number 5. There is an IEP meeting. Okay, so there's an IEP meetings and the student is present. Okay, so setting up the IEP meeting after everything that's happened, I'm assuming. You are assigned to interpret for this meeting since you are familiar with the student and interpret for a number of her classes. Okay, so I'm there as the interpreter, not as a member of the meeting, which as I understand, that's 2 very different things. During the meeting, the student shares her frustrations with the new interpreter, me, she has this year that is not helpful as other interpreter and who doesn't make any sense, and that she misses content in those classes. Okay, so obviously this girl is used to my colleague who switched the policy and signed ASL and who also helped her on her tests. So my ethical decisions made me decide that I would use C-sign as the policy says, and I would not help her extra on her test because that's not ethical for me. I do not believe that the student is allowed help on a test like that. And that she misses content in those classes. The teacher of the deaf asks for you to respond to these comments. What would you do and why? Like I mentioned before, being an interpreter and an actual member in the meeting are 2 different things. So I am not allowed to discuss my own personal opinions in the meeting, even if it is about me. As far as I know, I should not. I'm removed from the meeting. I'm strictly the interpreter. So I would probably explain to the teacher that if they want to talk about this, we need to set up a meeting outside of this IEP meeting so that we can talk as a group and not as me as the interpreter, because I'm assigned as the interpreter right now. So I would let the teacher know that I am not able to respond right now, but I am willing to meet outside of this and discuss these things with the family and the teacher. And then I would explain the differences in me and my colleagues and the reason I do the things that I do. But there is a boundary line because I am in the meeting and they're discussing me and my decisions on things, so it would probably be hard to remove myself from that. But the ethical decision would be to, strictly interpret and make sure that the teacher knows and the deaf and their family knows that I am here to interpret, and that's it. So just explaining to them that I am willing to meet with them outside of class to discuss these things and not in this IEP meeting because I am not a part of it as a member. And I think that's about it. Okay, thank you.